Hey, hey, hey. What's up, everyone? Love it every time I hear it. Welcome to Working It Out Across Generations. I am one of your co-hosts, Dr. Lynne.
And I'm Justin.
And we are so happy that you tuned in today because we know this topic applies to everyone. What's the topic?
So today we're going to be talking about, is it ever okay to lie? I personally love this topic. I think for me personally, there's been a time in my life where I lied and got good at it, right? And I think that a lot of it was due to, protecting myself and all these different things. And I think we all can agree there's plenty of reasons as to why people do lie, right? And I think the reason that we want to bring at least the conversation out there to the world is to really talk about when that's okay, if that's okay. And when it is, what does that look like, right? And so getting into my thoughts on the topic, right? There was definitely a time where for me, I really lied a lot. Like I was just afraid to either express how I really felt, right? So protecting myself from the potential reaction or response that I would get from other people if I started to go down that route. And I think that with that, a lot is built up, a lot is added up, right? It's energy. It takes energy to lie, and it takes even more energy to keep that lie going. So I think one of the most common ones that I know I ran into and that I know a lot of other people run into is simply the, are you okay? And saying I'm fine, right? When you're not. And I think that even though that's minuscule, it's still planting the seeds in your brain and in your heart that I'm not safe to share how I really feel, right? And honestly, subconsciously, we water our own plants all the time, right? Without even knowing it. And so I think that for a long time, lying became kind of like second nature in the sense of, I just don't want to ruffle any feathers. I don't want to add to people's plates, even though I'm going through stuff, right? And it got to a point where it had to come out. The truth had to come out. I had to release that for myself. It was healthier and better to release that for myself. And I knew that if I wanted to really get to where I wanted to go in life, chapter by chapter, right? Taking that more serious, then I'm gonna have to be more honest with myself, right? Literally honest with myself, honest with, other people, right? And take that step into saying, I don't want to lie to other people, but more importantly, I don't want to lie to myself anymore. So I think that it's an interesting topic because so many of us do it. It's so
I doubt that there's anybody that hasn't lied.
Yeah, I mean, like it's second nature for a lot of people, right? And I think that it's interesting to start to dissect why that is for a lot of people.
Yeah, I'm not saying that it's second nature, but I can't imagine that anyone has gotten through life without telling one lie, right? Because when we start talking about the reasons that people lie, or in particular, the reasons that you do when you think that it's okay to lie, I think that people will resonate with those reasons because they're not bad reasons per se. But I think that we all come up against situations. And I'm not a believer in a little white lie. Is a lie is a lie, right? I mean, you may tell it for a good reason, right? But it's still not the truth. And then what comes under a lie is, am I just kind of withholding information as opposed to straight telling you something that I know is in fact not true? And so people think about whether or not they would call that lying. But I think that I think it's hard. It's hard to be that person that is always honest. And a lot of us are seeing more. I think we're seeing more people telling lies. We're watching situations more, right? We have access to so much more, access to more media, and social media being one of the medias. We're in the middle in the United States, we're in the middle of an election, and and people often equate politicians with telling lies or stretching the truth. We have all these interesting sayings, right? So that we don't want to tell ourselves we're lying, or we don't want to call somebody a liar. We have things like stretching the truth. So it's not quite a lie, but it's not the whole truth. And part of what we want to really get used to is telling the truth. I think, hey, Mike, thanks again for joining. I think that sometimes that it is really hard to tell the truth. And we'll talk about this later on in the show. But I do think that so many of us come up against this. And whether we're people who consider that we lie a lot ourselves, or whether we're in relationship with someone who we can't seem to trust to tell the truth, or we don't always know what the truth is, I think all of us, right, at some point have been in that position. And this is why I think it is a really good topic. I can tell you, it's interesting that, you know, I love that. I love where you are in terms of the honesty. And for me, I struggled so much. Thank you for saying, you know, your struggle with telling the truth. I struggled so much, not just as a kid, but also even as an adult. I struggled with telling the truth. It got to a place where I had to confront it, because it for so many different reasons. So for me, it was really about that I grew up in a world, in a household where I couldn't tell my truth. The answers that were acceptable were the answers that were acceptable to my parents, and in particular, my mom. You had to say what she wanted to hear, and if you didn't, then you really were interrogated as to why you did not tell the truth. And it became very intimidating and very scary for me to tell the truth. And then it became, I'm sorry to say, very habitual, automatic, that even when there were times when telling the truth wasn't really going to cost me anything, I would find myself lying. And it just became this big thing. I will admit that it did not help that I am an actress. I love acting and playing roles. I love doing that. I did go to school for theater, so it wasn't attached to the lying per se, but I don't think it made it hard for me to lie, because I developed this skill of really playing a part, playing a role. And I don't think it was easy for me to come out of that sometimes. And sometimes I think I got attached to being someone else. I lived in that kind of world for a while, of being someone else and not finding myself interesting. I can remember that, thinking I'm not that interesting. So like make up a story that makes you sound more interesting. And I did that some, but primarily it was really about people pleasing. It was about saying what I thought the person before me wanted to hear, even if I knew that it wasn't true.
Yeah, I'm actually going to bring up a comment that I certainly resonate with. Thanks, Mike. I used to struggle with lying, not trying to hurt someone's feelings. Then I realized it was the words that I was using to communicate my point of view. I really, really appreciate that. And I think that, I definitely resonate with the people pleasing for sure of not just, the line that I stated before, right? But I think that, I love what you said just about wanting to give them, the other person, the other party, what we thought they would want to hear, right? And I think oftentimes, that's tricky in the sense of, unless you really have that language for yourself, if that other person has that language, then people really can start to waver on the things that they care about and the expression of those things, right? And so I think when we talk generationally, I think that a lot of young people are lying to themselves and definitely trying to people please in a lot of respects. And I think that, social media is definitely one of those things that doesn't help. It's very easy to put out there a life that you're not living and a life that honestly, if algorithms work and all these different things, you can feel like you're living that life for real, right? And you can have that be kind of reinforced and supported in a lot of ways. And I think that a lot of young people are running into simply not knowing really what they like, what they're into, what makes them happy, and really having the language for those things so that when something in life or someone tries to, kind of move them from that path, right? As life always does, it's always going to try to, give you opportunities to check and see if you're, really living your full truth and your honest truth. It'll be easier to, check those moments for what they are and stay grounded in who you are. And so I think that if we can really give young people some real language, some real steps and tools on, the questions that you ask yourself, right? How long you sit with some of those questions and being able to honestly like, love, respect, whatever it is that they land on. I think that'll do a lot of wonders for how we move forward as far as self-esteem, as far as, how people look in the mirror at themselves, right? All these different things. And so it'll make, I think, a lot of those unspoken battles, I think, stuff that we really can't speak to and speak about. So that's what I would say as far as generationally speaking.
Yeah, I think that I do think that children in my generation were under a tremendous amount of stress to be and be a certain way and say certain things. And so I feel like there were children who, I don't want to say were forced to lie, or felt like I just feel like they felt like it was safer.
Yeah, no, literally safer. I think even from stories I hear of my friends, right? Like, they lied out of protecting themselves from whatever consequence that an adult could possibly give them, whatever it is, right? So I definitely feel you on the safer part. I've heard that a lot.
Right.
From my family.
And I don't, and I don't always think that it was like, well, I don't want to be punished. I think that it was, they're not going to like my answer and therefore I'm going to be punished. I think there's a difference in that. One is like you're trying to be slick, right? Get over or something. And the other is that you really do feel a danger. And even though the right thing to do is to tell the truth, because we do learn that lying is wrong, even though the right thing to do is to tell the truth, you feel in that moment there's a greater consequence to you if you do that, right, than there is if you say what it is that people want you to say, or the adults in our lives wanted us to say. And I just found that so many of my friends growing up found it very easy to lie. Like there was very little discussion around it being wrong or shouldn't do it, like, especially teenage years. Come on, y'all. Think about teenage years. And there are so many of us that have the same stories about, yeah, my mom and dad thought I was here because I told them that I was at so and so's house, and really I was with, a guy, a girl, whoever, right? And because they wouldn't let me. And I can remember that I know some of my friends had very earlier ages when they could date. And my parents were very clear about the things that we could do, and everything seemed to start at 16. And I had friends who were younger than that. Yeah, and so I think teenagers in particular learn, and I'm not branding everybody. I know there are plenty of teenagers who never would lie, right? But I think also,
what?
Well, maybe not. I don't know. I think so. I think there were, hey, whoever's watching out there, Mike, Andrea, hey, Andrea, what's up? Did y'all lie? Mike already said he did, like, not to hurt people's feelings, but think about teenage years. Everybody out there, teenage years. Do you think there were more teenagers lying, or more teenagers who felt like, I don't lie, I'm not going to lie, my parents would be disappointed, or whoever's raising me would be disappointed, or it's not the right thing to do, so I'm always going to tell the truth? And it's interesting because I can remember, now that I'm thinking about it, I was in school, and I know for sure you don't lie to teachers, right? Lying. Yeah, Mike. Yeah, I don't lie. Okay. I thought Andrea might be the one, right? And you've taught Madison not to lie. Absolutely. But I'm going to say something about you, Andrea. And the little that I know about your amazing, beautiful mom is that you also may have had the circumstances in your home where it was okay and safe to say your truth. And I think that for many, in particular teenagers, that isn't necessarily the circumstance. I know for me, it absolutely was not. And I got caught in a huge lie as a teenager, and really huge, with huge consequences as a result. But I'm going to be honest. I felt the rule was too harsh. And so I broke the rule. I told my parents, or my parents thought I was hanging out with my friends at a particular house that she really trusted the parents there. And actually I would start there, but then I'd be hanging out with my boyfriend. But there was nothing going on, but we took walks, we spent time talking to, but I just thought it was just too harsh that I absolutely couldn't do that. And so I spent the entire summer doing that. And then, of course, when my mom, of course, would thank everybody for everything, and went at the end of the summer to thank them for hosting me and my sister. And the parent was like, well, she really wasn't here much at all. And so that was a huge consequence. I'm not telling anybody, I'm not condoning lying out there. I took the consequences. To this day, I don't think I would have done it differently. But I think that many teenagers are not in a place where they can tell their parents the truth and expect that they won't have severe consequences for just being honest. And I'm not advocating for lying. I think we all should have conditions where we can tell the truth, for sure, especially in our homes with our parents. It's important for our own safeties, right? For parents to really know what's happening with us. But I do think that teenage years are when you'll see the most lying. And hey, if I'm wrong, good. I'm glad to be wrong. But that's what I think, just based on what things were like with me coming up.
Awesome. So let's get into some ways in which lying can do harm.
Yeah.
I think we've all thought about some of these things before, but let's start the conversation. So Dr. Lynn, start us off.
All right. In relationships, and I had said that before. So whatever the relationships, and I was just talking about our relationships with our parents, right? Our parenting relationships. I think that I can remember my mom saying the biggest thing for her was that she could no longer trust me. I'm gonna push back on that and say I don't think you trusted me to begin with. That's why I don't think you trusted me to begin with, and that's why things were so strict. And I'm looking back as a parent now, right? I'm looking back as a parent and still saying there was no conversation. You didn't really know who I was. So I don't feel like you trusted me in in a lot of the rules that you set down. But I can remember my heart hurting when I heard her say that she could no longer trust me. And if you think about just in intimate relationships, right? And when you're dating or married, it is really difficult to be in relationship with a liar. And I know that people will say there's a difference between lying now and then and being a liar. I would agree. Well, somebody who that's just who they do, what they do. They lie constantly. You can never count on them to ever tell the truth. It's very different than there's a reason in a certain situation where you decide that it's best to tell a lie, right? I know the difference between the two, but I really feel like nobody wants to live with someone who they never know if they are telling them the honest truth, especially if they're asking for them to do that.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely second and double down on that when it comes to family relationships, right? I love your point about, being safe in your own home to just say what you're feeling and feel what you're feeling. And I know that I'm grateful for having had that in my experience, but I know so many more people who haven't had that. And I can only imagine the harm that could do for future potential relationships, being that wasn't a foundation that was laid early on in their lives. So I definitely think that's important for sure.
Yeah.
Next, credibility and reputation. So I think this is huge. I think this comes down to, when people and your name come up, what's being said. And I know for me, at least with what I think, I don't think you want to be known as someone who doesn't tell the truth, someone who's not trustworthy, right? And I think that, again, depending on the circumstances, the situations, you can tell a lot. Stop touching stuff. Please. Thank you. Thank you. Jeez. You can tell a lie here and there, but not necessarily be considered a liar, right? And all these different things. But if you're lying all the time, if, as you said, people can't really get a read on you, if you're really truthful about what you say, and especially if you walk the stuff that you talk, I think that's another thing, especially generationally. I think that's another thing. People I think can sniff that out pretty quickly, and that message will spread like wildfire to make sure that, in future endeavors, right? Like people know when you walk in the room that they have to act a certain way. Yeah. And I think that's only going to hurt you in the end and your future opportunities and your ability to, look in the mirror and say, this is who I am, right? Because at that point, you're going to be like, well, who am I? If this is who I am and this is what people are saying and there's a disconnect, who am I? And I think that's a very tough question that, we struggle with for life. I personally think that because, we grow, we change, we evolve, all these different things. And yet there's still a better way to approach that question.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is incredibly important. And it's one of the reasons why I absolutely had to confront this lying thing. I had to. I do not want to be someone that people see. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a businesswoman. I don't want people to see me as someone who is not credible, who who would lie on a resume, who would lie to get a particular contract, who lies about what they can deliver in terms of services, who lies about who they are, what they've done in their life. And I feel like that is incredibly important. And that for me, I want people to say, whether you like me or not, I mean, she is who she says she is, right? She can do what she says she can do. She has done what she says she has done. Yes. And the reputation is earned. That to me is extremely important. And I am so glad that I confronted this when it comes to that, because I can say that people can trust my credibility and my reputation. And that is important. I know that your dad and I certainly have expressed that to you and your brother, and that it is really something that you want to protect and make sure that even to say the hard things, even if you have to say the hard things and deliver that to people, that you do that. And at least they know you're willing to be honest above everything else.
For sure. Yeah, I love that you did that for us, because I think now I'm probably telling too much of the damn truth. But it's a good thing, right? It really is a release, and it's a good thing. So give us the next one.
Yeah. Oh, self-esteem. Yeah. Listen, if you are lying, I really feel like there is something to how you feel about yourself, because it is something that takes away from who you are. The older you get, right? You really have to feel good about yourself. And I'm not sure how you feel good about yourself when you are lying, when you are constantly lying, when you have to play certain roles, right? With certain people in certain rooms. And then half the time you don't even remember what you told people.
Yeah. Or you give this role to the wrong person or whatever it is. So then people are like, well, wait, I got this version of you when I first met you, or whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
So true.
Yeah.
That's so true.
And then what does it say about how you feel about yourself that you can't be yourself, that you can't say the things that are true for you, the things that make you feel good about who you are? If you're lying, you are hurting your self-esteem. You may think that you're boosting it because maybe you're telling these great lies of all these great things you did, and or your family did, and whatever. But that is not boosting your self-esteem. That is clearly, to me, a sign that you don't have good self-esteem, and therefore you have to make up stories about yourself in order for you think you're doing it for other people to feel good about you. It really comes from a place of you not feeling good about you.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I agree. So next, we started to talk about how lying does harm, right? And I think that, naming a few of those things is really, really important. And we were kind of struggling with like the, I guess, verbiage of this, like, but like, because again, we don't necessarily advocate for lying. We don't condone it, right? However, there are circumstances in which people lie, and in which sometimes those lies can be a good thing. Yeah, let's just go with that. So I'll start us off here. And I think the first thing that came to our mind was protection from harm, right? I think that, when I think of protection from harm, I think of, potentially someone that's in a relationship that's abusive, right? And things of those natures, right? And all parties around that, right? People who are supporting, people who are in the actual situations, right? All these different things. I think that protection from harm is huge. For me, as I stated earlier, I think that, I definitely have some more work to do to see exactly what harm I was afraid of per se. But I know for sure that, I felt like I was protecting my emotions. I was protecting my feelings. I was protecting all these different things that, mattered to me so that I could try to fit into the mold, right? Maneuver my way through things, right? And even though there is harm that came from that, I think that, definitely in the sense of kind of like a short-term fix, right? Like it definitely felt good to do so in the sense of, I know the truth, I know my truth, and I'm going to hold that, knowing that potentially in the world there's going to be someone who won't. So there's so many reasons as to why people would protect themselves from different harm. But harm is definitely one of I think the main reasons why people lie, to either protect themselves from others or honestly sometimes to protect themselves from yourself.
So yeah, that's interesting. What do you mean protect yourself from yourself?
I think that a lot of people are afraid to feel. And I think that a lot of people are afraid to give real language to what you're feeling.
Wow.
There's over 300 emotions that are listed, stated, right, that have their own definitions and their own conditions and all these different things.
English language, yeah.
Right. And yet we are only familiar with about 10 or 15 of them. Right. And so I think that protecting ourselves from ourselves, right, I think, a lot of people are afraid to get real with themselves about, what they're feeling, right? We talked about that foundation, if that was laid or not by the adults, early on in your life, if they've really advocated for you to get that out or if not. And I think that it's just really important to be able to name what things are for what they are. Even if you were to say, I'm anxious in a time in which you're really angry, right? And it comes out maybe in a similar way, whatever it is, right? That's not necessarily lying to yourself. However, the more in which you water that seed, right, the more in which that distortion and disconnect will start to become habitual, as we've talked about, which is a lie. And so, I think people just need to start getting comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of feelings that are uncomfortable, right? But we call them for what they are, and we'll be able to really not only address what we need to in a much better fashion, but release what we need to in a much better fashion.
Yeah, I think when I look at this protection from harm, I think about emotional harm. I really do. And it is, I can think about a situation where, I struggle with weight my whole life, right? And started in probably from the time I was 8. And I can remember going to school, and there was another student, there was another young person, this was elementary school, that was overweight as well. And we had summer break, and we came back in September, and we had the first day of school. And my mom asked me, well, is this person still overweight? And I remember lying. She had actually lost a lot of weight. She was thin. And I said yes, right? And probably 2 weeks later or something, my mother had run into her. And so she came back and she said, oh, she is not overweight, and went into this whole thing. But I can remember I lied because I knew that I was then going to be berated about still being overweight. And I just couldn't deal with it. I couldn't handle it. It's not that I didn't think that she would ever see her. My mom was very involved in school. She was going to come up to school at some point. So I, yes, that's where I got it from. That's where I got it from. Yeah, she was good with that. I had no problem. Yeah, people don't like to see their mom coming. It's not that I like to see her coming either, but I recognize particularly the environment that we were in, that she needed to be at school. We were the one of few Black families in that school, and she needed to be on top of things, and same for me with you all. But that was why I lied in that situation, because I just couldn't take it. Now, yes, I got it. I guess I got it worse because I lied, and she berated me for that. But when you want to talk about self-esteem, right? My self-esteem could not handle what she was going to say to me about my weight and the fact that I hadn't lost weight and this other girl had. I couldn't handle it in that moment. And so I that was my protection harm, from emotional harm.
Yeah, for sure. And I think my generation relates to that a lot, the emotional harm piece.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Nice. Next, I would say maintaining privacy. I think this is huge, considering that, there was a time where, as I said, I definitely lied a lot, and I lied about, either what I was doing or who I was friends with or what I supported, what opinion I supported, whatever it was. It was just lying left and right, right? And I think that once I broke out of that cycle and I started to tell the truth and I started to live my truth and be in my truth, I heard a very, very, very real quote from a mentor of mine. This was recently, even though I think it applies to so much of how I've started to live my life once I, broke that cycle. But he said that he learned this from another mentor of his. Life's a vessel, right? Just ask it the right questions, right? And something like that. Kevin Thames, please let me know if I'm getting that right. Probably butchered it, but you'll shoot me a text and get me the right quote. So, but I think that's so real in the sense of I don't have to lie to you. I can know what's mine and what's mine to hold while still being an open book. So if you ask me the right questions, if you ask me, stuff in which you really do want an answer, right? I'm in a place now where I can give that to you, whether it's even 80% or 70% of how much of me I'm giving you. But that's still genuine and that's still real. And that's still me gauging what to give you, engaging in those moments. Where I can give you, but also what I still feel confident leaving with.
Yeah.
And so I think that, privacy is huge. I know for me, when it comes to relationships and future relationships, I'm definitely now more private, I would say. I definitely want to enjoy that time with that person and with my friends and all these different things. But again, right, it's if you ask me the right questions, then I will give you the truth. I will give you my truth to whatever degree in which I feel I'm still leaving intact.
Yeah.
And that's not as conditional as it sounds. It's more of, you just know and are able to gauge the more truthful that you are with yourself in these other situations, how much of yourself to give. So yeah, that's what I'd say.
Yeah, I think that people do try to maintain privacy, but I think you really could say, that's really none of your business, or I don't choose to share that or whatever.
Okay.
But I do think that people will do it. Listen, there's some nosy people out there. They don't stop at one question.
Yeah.
So sometimes,
op-ed, whatever it is. Yeah.
Sometimes people feel backed into a corner.
A 90-minute special, whatever.
Right. Sometimes they feel backed into a corner and they choose to lie, because there's a choice, y'all, right? They choose to lie to protect their privacy because they can see that this person does not respect it at all and wants to know everything. And I think that this one, it's a hard one for some folks to say, I really don't want to share that, or it's none of your business, or stop asking me all these questions. They're very personal. I think some people find it difficult to say those words, so they choose a lie instead.
Yeah, for sure. I like that. And you actually came up with
I did, because we were struggling
how is lying good?
Right.
That's literally what we were asking ourselves for I don't even know how long we were coming up with this, but how is lying good? So I'm glad we came up with a third one for you guys, but Dr. Lynne, you got that for us. So.
Okay, character check. I think it gives you an opportunity to check your character. Over a period of time, I know that lying was making me feel badly about who I was, right? And I kept doing a character check. I just never really took the time, before I took the time, to figure out how to stop, right? And if I'm honest, I'm a very spiritual person. I believe in God, and God is the one that told me to stop and actually put me in a situation where I was really clear. I had lied to someone, I was an adult, right? And starting out my business, and I had lied to someone. It wasn't a big lie. I can't even remember what it was, but I can remember clearly hearing from God that I need to call that person back and admit that I had lied. And I was mortified. But I knew that I had to do it because it was a character check. Who am I if I'm not telling the truth? And especially the work that we do, we're in the business of communication and resolving conflicts, and that's really difficult to do when you're lying to folks, right? And then as a result, feeling badly about yourself. So I think that it gives us an opportunity, if there's anything good about lying, right, which we're saying we had trouble coming up with, but we understand, then the good thing is that each lie you tell, hopefully it's giving you a character check. Is that who I want to be? Is that who I really am? Do I even trust me to tell me the truth? I mean, you should be getting character checks all along with each lie you tell, and eventually get to the place where you decide that's not who I want to be. I don't want to lie to people or to myself. And even if it's hard, I'm going to learn how to tell the truth, to speak the truth to people.
Yeah, I like that. I honestly second everything that you just said. So
yeah, it was an interesting one to come up with, because I'd forgotten y'all that we hadn't got the third one. And so when I went to set up the show, I was like, oh, and I remember the struggle, but that really came to me that is such an important thing, that our character, just like credibility and reputation, but our character, because credibility and reputation often apply to business, right? Outside of the home, even outside of ourselves sometimes. But character is who you are when no one is watching, right? That you are that person that you say that you are and want to be. So if you're not getting character checks when you're lying, then something's really wrong, or you're ignoring or suppressing or something, because that should definitely be hitting you in the gut or the heart every time that you are telling a lie. Yeah. So we had more comments that I'd love to see, because you all are talking on this one. Mike, thanks. I think he's talking to you, Justin. Love that you be real with yourself.
Yeah, have to. I mean, I was going to say this as my closing thought, but I love that you brought that up, because I feel like for me, the big driving force for me to just like at least address it and start to address it was that I have to live with me before anyone else does.
And longer than
anyone else does. My path starts with me and ends with me, and so does yours. So I think for me, it became one of those things where, I'm not intentionally trying to be rude. I'm not, intentionally trying to hurt people's feelings or anything like that. I just know, for me, the real is where I thrive. The real is where work gets done. The real is where, stuff moves. And I think that I'd much rather, of the hards that we have to pick, right? Everything's hard. We just have to pick our hard. I'd much rather live addressing and owning and living my truth than investing energy in keeping up lies.
Yeah.
It's me that has to live with me at the end of the day. So I know that even if I know you may not like it, it may not land well, even with the right phrasing, Mike, I really appreciated that point earlier, right? Just having the right language really was a big gap, right? Filling that gap, I know for me, even with all that, I will feel good because I got that out. I released that for myself, and I was willing to sign up for whatever came out of that.
Yeah.
So I really, really support that. I really like that.
Yeah. There's a couple of comments I actually want to put up and just address. So let me see this one. Nowadays, with all of these laws, it seems like teenagers have less consequences, so they should be open to telling the truth. But I think, Mike, that it's not even just open to telling the truth. It is really learning how to give voice to who you are in a way that is allowed. And there may be a lot of laws to protect young people from, I think, from physical harm, but emotional harm is huge. Mental health is huge. And sometimes those consequences are way too hard on people, right? And telling the truth isn't the easiest option. And we also don't learn how to communicate effectively a lot of times. And that's a part of being able to tell the truth. How do I even say this? Right? Whatever that truth is, whatever my truth is, particularly in the face of someone who just like maybe vehemently opposed to what I'm saying. You said in another comment, Mike, that you sometimes lying to protect yourself from retaliation, right? That's a part of being able to tell the truth, is if you feel like there's going to be retaliation against you for telling your truth, then you don't feel protected in whatever environment that you are in. And therefore, it just seems less costly to not be honest in that circumstance. And again, we're not saying that lying is a good thing. We are saying, though, that there are different situations where people choose it out of just their own protection. And I think that that is something that's really important. And thank you, Andrea, for understanding. I loved your comment that you didn't like your mom coming to school. We made her wear high heels because she was short. Hilarious. But thank you for understanding in the situation that I talked about the weight, understanding why I chose not to tell the truth in that situation, not so much that you are condoning that I lied, but understanding. And that goes back to the piece that I'm just talking about before. Will the person understand where you're coming from and why, and perhaps why you hid the truth? Can you come back and say why you did that and not have the retaliation and not feel like you are such a miserable person for making that choice? And will they own their responsibility in that? It's not that they're responsible for you lying, but that they have not set up the kind of circumstances that make it easy for you to be your truth and to speak your truth. And I know that for me, that was the situation. And I own that I lied and that it was wrong. But I also own that they never created the environment where I could feel safe to tell my truth. And they never owned that.
Yeah, this is where the dialectic skill will be huge. Being able to hold multiple truths at once, and at times, those truths are opposing of each other, right? So I really appreciate the conversation. I thank any and everyone that tuned in. I thank everyone that commented, and we're just getting these things out here. They're important to get out there. They're important to know that we can talk about these things and in a healthy way, even when things get uncomfortable, right? And we can live our truth. We can live our truth.
Yeah, I too am really grateful that folks showed up for this. I know that it could be controversial for people. There are people who feel like there's absolutely never a reason to lie, but I think that there's absolutely a reason to think about why you are doing it, if you are doing it, and what it may be in fact costing you. And one of the biggest costs is that people never get to know the amazing person, real person that you are. And we're all unique and different, and we're all conditioned to be like everybody else or to be someone special, like I said, or interesting. But you're interesting enough just being you. And I'm just encouraging folks to find the words and the courage to be truthful.
Yeah, absolutely. You said that way better than I ever could have and would have. So that's why you're here. You know, all the beautiful stuff. So yeah, I mean, if you enjoy us, enjoy the show, please tune in to E360TV.com, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV. We are getting some more licenses soon.
Yes, watch us on the big screen TV.
Yes, absolutely. Facebook.com, Working It Out TV show. Thank you, everyone that's tuning in and joining from Facebook, getting some engagement going. We see it all, appreciate it all. Same with YouTube, Working It Out Across Generations. And yeah, this is just great stuff. I definitely slept on this one. And, you know, I'm really glad that we were able to, you know, provide this space for ourselves, for other people, and anyone in the future that tunes into this episode. So, I mean, this is just awesome. I'm very happy right now. I'm very relieved. I feel a release, even just in owning our truths here.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I really do. So
this was a good one for that. And Melissa, we didn't get you a comment, but we see you there. Thanks for joining.
Yes, absolutely. So, you know how we wrap this up. Conflict is here to teach you something about ourselves. Go out there and find out what that is. This was Working It Out Across Generations. I'm Justin.
And I am Dr. Lynn.
We'll see you next week.
All right. Let me